It's a pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Rahul Panicker. So normally this would be done by his PhD advisor, Joe Kahn. Fortunately for me, Joe is in Portugal right now, so he can't do it. So it falls to his associate advisor, and that's me. So I'm very happy to do that. So in fact, we wrote a paper on using convex optimization to design compensation of multimode fiber systems. That was 10 years ago. So after that, and this will be a very short intro, as these intros are supposed to be. So after that, he took the next logical step after that paper we wrote, which is to found a nonprofit company called Embrace. Actually, I'm joking. There is no connect. It's a nonprofit company that developed extremely low-cost infant warmers for premature babies. So probably some of you know this, or many of you know this, but the rest should know it. So he and his co-founders and Embrace, they've been given like many awards, much recognition for what they've done, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to list the awards, but I will say this, and I think this is an old number, but as of a couple of years ago, these low-cost warmers had saved 200,000 babies and counting. So I think that's the best award you could possibly get. So Rahul, I want to say on behalf of the department and personally, let me say that we are enormously proud of you and what you've done.
Thank you. This is a tremendous honor to be able to give this talk. 125th anniversary of the department. You've heard any number of talks here with the enormous history of the department, how illustrious this is. So I'm greatly honored. I think back to the time I landed up as a grad student, right? And there's the old great library of Alexandria. It's 2,000 years ago, with over 1 million scrolls and scholars from all over the ancient world. It was the first known research institute in the world, right? There were people there from Thebes, from Persia, from Samos, from Byzantium, and they were studying everything under the sun and beyond it. They had astronomers, they had mathematicians, linguists, anatomists, poets, astrologers, and so on. My journey to Stanford was a lot easier. I got good grades in undergrad, did some decent stuff, and got admitted to Stanford. Just had to take a flight out of India via Singapore. Landed up, but many of my peers were probably modern-day descendants of some of those scholars. So my quals study group had people from Iran and Turkey, and further away from Alexandria, from Korea and China, and from North Carolina and Oklahoma. And my neighbors, I had neighbors from Nigeria and Greece, and they were studying political science and medicine and law. And I came from a tech school. My undergraduate degree was in electrical engineering. I minored in physics. And I land up here, and here's this fantastic environment. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks into my first fall quarter, I went to maybe the first public lecture I went to was by a hostage negotiator. His name was Terry Waite. He was the hostage negotiator for the Archbishop of Canterbury. And he, over the next hour or so, told us a story of how, while negotiating the release of hostages with the Hezbollah in Lebanon, he himself was taken hostage. And he was held hostage for 5 years, of which 4 were in solitary confinement. And while being held hostage, he had no way to know the news from the outside world, but then he had no contact with anyone else, but he'd still tap on the walls and the taps and the pipes. And one day he got a response over taps on pipes. And he had served in the World War. He had served in the army and knew Morse code. And it so turned out that the person at the other end knew Morse code. And so over pipes, they communicated over Morse code. And the prison guard outside the other person's cell used to listen to the radio. And so it was over taps in Morse code over pipes in a prison cell of the Hezbollah that he learned about the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union. And in spite of all this, he held only kindness in his heart for people. And he talked about how he wrote his book in his head, various things he did to prevent himself from going crazy. And it's around that time that I decided, hey, I want to hang around here for longer. I don't want to go out and sign up to work for Intel and Qualcomm, and that can wait, or Google, or the Googles and Facebooks. Those could wait. And so my primary reason for staying on at Stanford was to actually just enjoy the environment. Now, quals happened. I did okay, and got started with my research career. I'd say more than half my time at Stanford was spent staring out of those windows at Bytes. It's a great place to hang out, especially for an extrovert like me. Lots of people come by, lots of conversations. So research continued, but I also did lots of things outside of research. I worked at Slack for a while. I was part of the Stanford Religious Roundtable organized by Professor Ron Howard on designing ethical societies. We invited practicing witches and Scientologists and Buddhist monks to come talk. I was paid by Stanford for 4 years to throw parties. I was a multicultural theme house coordinator. And like I said, research happened. We solved SOCPs. Actually, interesting story. My thesis work involved posing a problem. We eventually posed the underlying problem as a convex problem and solved it. I demonstrated this was for high-speed optical fiber communications, and I did the proofs, et cetera, et cetera. But then after a while, I Googled, and this was late in my graduate career, and found a paper. So the class of problems that I solved fell under quadratic programs with one negative eigenvalue. I think sometime in my 4th year here, I found this paper written, I don't know, in the 80s or something that said quadratic programming with one negative eigenvalue is NP hard. There was no soft copy, so I went to the math library and found the hard copy. And realized the value of ignorance, because had I known that it was, early in my graduate career, had I known that this was an NP hard problem, I'd probably have been dissuaded from trying it. But sometimes ignorance is value. It turns out that there's a large subclass that is very much in P, and we solved it, and with that demonstrated a 100x improvement in capacity. And at that point, it was time to graduate. But then, one of those things I did on the side was to putter around at the D School. So my association with the D School started when the D School was still run out of the back of a trailer, from a trailer in the back of campus. And it was a magical place. But one of the important things I learned at the D School was how technology and business are ultimately means of solving people's problems. So how do you do human-centered design? How do you put people at the center of your problem-solving approach? I signed up in my 5th year, when I should have been writing my thesis, I signed up for entrepreneurial design for extreme affordability, which was a heavy project class to develop design products for the developing world. So I'd occasionally show up to Joe and Steven's office for meetings with prototypes of wax dripping and things like that. In the class, the challenge was to design a solution to keep babies warm in the developing world. Incubators cost many millions, and can we build a cheaper one? Now, the D School, being the D School, encouraged us to zoom out and look at the problem. And here's the problem. There's about 20 million low birth weight babies born world over every year. That's roughly the population of Australia that's born low birth weight every year. About 3 million of them die in the first year of life. And if you're a baby that's born in a relatively well-off family or in an urban area, this is the solution. You place the baby in an incubator. As you can see, I was doing a lot to do with convex optimization here. So in the absence of these solutions, this is what you'd find. Babies placed under light bulbs. Incandescent lamps are better, we all know, are better at producing heat than light. And then there's the practice of sometimes space heaters, and there's the practice of skin-to-skin care. We developed, well, in the class, we developed a prototype of this device that looks nothing like an incubator, but the heart of it was a wax-like, it's a phase change material. It was a wax-like substance that had a precise melting point of human body temperature, normal human body temperature, and therefore was intended to mimic the womb. But we designed this so that it could work without electricity. Every 4 to 6 hours, you use 2 liters of boiled water, and because of phase transition and latent heat, it could release heat without changing temperature. It was as simple as that. And we realized that we were onto something that could make a difference. The class had a nonprofit partner organization out of Nepal. And we thought, we're going to be done with this class, and they're going to take this forward. They were not interested in taking this forward. They were still looking for a cheaper version of that glass box that you saw earlier. So at that point, me and my teammates, who I did not know from before the class, decided we should do something about this. And each of us took deeply personal calls. I think the reasoning I went through was, this is at that point a UN Millennium Development Goal to reduce infant mortality by 2/3. And what are we saying? Neonatal mortality by 2/3, I think. And what are we saying here? Some of the biggest problems in the world should be left to people who do not have more lucrative opportunities. Something about that didn't add up. And I told myself that had I taken the traditional pathway, my degrees would have stood me in good stead, but I'd have failed my education. So with that reasoning, we went forward, did product development, testing. We had no idea how to develop a medical device. We knew nothing about babies. Thankfully, we had good advisors at the med school. We had the Stanford community stepped in, helped us. This is one of the early babies we helped in India. We launched the product in November 2012. We got regulatory certification. India did not, at that point, have credible regulatory certification, regulatory mechanisms. In the meanwhile, me and my co-founders, we moved to India. 2 Americans, 2 Indians, set up shop in Bangalore. 2012, we launched the product. By November that year, I think we reached about 2,000 babies. We slowly scaled. And today we've reached over 500,000 babies in over 25 countries. And the WHO recognized us as a top innovation in global health and procured from us to help babies of Syrian refugees in refugee camps in Jordan. So at that point I figured, and this was, by the way, not a nonprofit company, it was a VC-funded company. We raised venture capital from Vinod Khosla, Mark Benioff, Capricorn Investments, and so on. So at that point, we realized that, I realized a couple things. One, this is going to have organic growth, but in order to really, really scale this, we need partnerships. And secondly, the hockey stick will come at an unknown time. So I wanted to separate the fortunes of the product from the fortunes of the company. And we had done the hard part. Any new doctor using this product on a baby would not be incurring any new risk. So we'd crossed that proverbial chasm. So we licensed the product to a larger company. So I saw that licensing deal through and asked the question, I should tell you a story. I did ask the question, what next? But this is one of my favorite stories. This is Baby Long. He was found in a garbage heap outside Beijing. He was taken in now in China because of the one-child policy. Lots of low birth weight babies don't make it to the hospital. They actually are abandoned and they find their way to orphanages. And we had just supplied these units to Little Flower orphanage in Beijing, where he was placed in the embrace warmer. That's my co-founder Jane holding the baby. That's baby Long celebrating his first birthday. And a few months later, we get this note. I loved your post celebrating Long's first birthday. We have pre-approval to adopt him and hope to travel to Beijing this summer to bring him home. We are so grateful for your organization and the role you played in saving Long's life. This is Long's family out in Chicago. He now goes by the name of Nathan, and he has significantly outgrown the warmer. So, like I said, at that point, I asked the question of what next? And I could see that there were two important technologies that were revolutionizing things around. One was CRISPR-Cas9, the ability to precisely edit our genes, and using that to be able to to cure disease and possibly even change our nature. And the other technology that was shaping the world was that deep learning had happened, so AI was taking place. The part of me that loved applied math kept in touch with the literature, and I realized that AI was potentially a powerful force to to help the underserved billions. And so I started. I took up the role of head of research at a nonprofit AI research lab called the Wadhwani Institute for Artificial Intelligence. This is so the lab is roughly 2 years old. It's headed by Dr. Anandan, who used to head Microsoft Research in India. And we are solving, and as a nonprofit research lab, we are solving large-scale problems with AI. We look at health, agriculture, financial inclusion, education, a number of other domains. I'll give you some examples of things we're working on. So I knew a few things by now about babies. And so one of the things that we're working on right now is how to weigh babies. Turns out that too many of these low birth weight babies are missed. UNICEF data shows that less than half of them are weighed at birth. And if found, they're relatively easy to help. And there's many reasons there. It looks like it's fairly, well, what you need to weigh them is a spring balance. But even with something so simple, so many of them get missed. Any guesses why so many of them are missed? Seems like a fairly stupid thing to do, right? Weigh them with a spring balance. Any guesses? Why the world is missing weighing half its low birth weight babies? You can't cheat, Kirti. Yeah? Yes, fair concern. Yeah, as you can see, it's taking 3 women to actually do this. What else? Okay. There's many cultural, spring balances often never reach these healthcare workers. They sit in state capitals or district headquarters. Supply chains don't necessarily work. There are cultural taboos. In the first 30 or 40 days of life, outsiders are not allowed to touch babies. And I'd say for a fair reason. I don't know how many babies have been in that spring balance. And if I had a newborn baby, I probably wouldn't want that baby in there. And finally, there's data quality issues. This is a picture from a register, and you can see every baby weighs exactly 2.5 kilograms. You know the cutoff of low birth weight? Want to guess? Happens to be 2.5 kilograms. So these are issues we deal with. In the meanwhile, the smartphone revolution has happened, and frontline healthcare workers have been equipped with smartphones. And so what we are doing is building a computer vision solution where you take a short video of a baby, and from that, we can do a full 3D reconstruction of the baby. And turns out that babies have fairly constant density, to within 3%. and therefore you can estimate weight. But you also get other things for free, like head circumference and length, measures that are considered too onerous to do in the field today. And how do we do this? Eigenvectors. So that's where the eigenvectors come in. So it turns out that, so if you had to represent a baby as a set of vertices on a mesh, you need about 7,000 vertices or so to get a decent representation. In x, y, z coordinates, that's 21,000 real numbers. But in reality, it turns out that realistic baby shapes live in something like a 100-dimensional space. So you do PCA on the shape space, in shape space. And it turns out that realistic babies live in a 100-dimensional space. And so with that, we're able to, even from partial views, we're able to do a full 3D reconstruction of the baby. This is an example of a baby. That's a video taken on a cell phone. And you can see the 3D reconstruction overlaid. And in case you thought that really clean backgrounds work, you can see colored background, strong shadows. Rightmost image, I can't even see the baby, but the algorithm detects it. And that's the baby actually moving through that PCA space, the first 4 eigenvectors. And now shape changes. So model-based learning works. It's not always model-free learning. And how do we plan to, so this is actually, in doing this work, we've created new vision algorithms, and this work is being submitted to CVPR this year. For the results we have, because so far no one's actually done this, the ability to weigh from partial images. But how do you plan to disseminate this? We wouldn't want to release another app and go through that process of organic dissemination of solutions. But it turns out that multiple governments across countries have established digital pipelines for healthcare workers. And these are mHealth solutions that have been deployed. South Africa has Mom Connect, India has the mother and child tracking system, and so on. There's multiple systems. So ideally, this should be a feature in any number of apps rather than a standalone app. And there's lots of other things that we're working on. Oh, this is one of the remaining contestants for the AI X Prize in the current round. And the prize, the competition comes to an end in April, so we'll know. The other problems we're working on, tuberculosis, large-scale problem, and in the absence of proper containment, we have drug-resistant TB that's developed. So I won't go into details, but basically there's 2 large problems in tuberculosis: finding patients and keeping patients, and we're working on both of those. On the finding patient side, we're looking at correlates of TB, and from that, creating maps of hotspots and dark spots. And once you have hotspots and dark spots, then there's an exploration-exploitation trade-off of where you send your healthcare workers to optimally discover cases. We're officially AI partners to India Central TB Division, and we're also working with PATH to extend this to other countries. We also work we have a large grant from the Gates Foundation to be able to do contextual AI in health, which is how do you bring in contextual reasoning into healthcare. Lots of fun stuff there. This is a multi-million-dollar grant to do that work, and we're doing it with lots and lots of collaborations, including here at Stanford. And we also work in cotton farming. Another one of the problems we're working on where cotton farmers are badly affected by pests, and so we're helping with pest management in cotton farming. I could keep talking about the work we do. But how is all of this relevant to Stanford? I'd say there's many pathways that this can take forward. So my own research interests are in looking at how technology can actually solve large-scale problems, and a few things have emerged. So for example, I have an interest in model-based learning. All of deep learning today can still only do correlational reasoning. All of deep learning cannot tell us if lightning causes thunder or thunder causes lightning, whether disease causes symptoms or symptoms cause disease. We need causal reasoning there, and causal reasoning has to go further into counterfactual reasoning, right? because that is how we understand the world. We still do not have machines that can, no robot today can say, I should have done better. Because that's a statement of counterfactual reasoning. And eventually we need our machines to actually solve our scientific challenges, to be able to form hypotheses, experiment, analyze data, and repeat the loop to do the scientific experiment. Can that be algorithmized? These are some of my personal interests. But this is all in the space of AI. There's many, many other interesting problems to solve, right? We need solutions in new materials, synthetic biotech, medicine, energy. You heard a number of possible areas. And it's not just creating new knowledge that's needed here. Humanity's ability to actually further knowledge has not kept pace with gaining wisdom. We invent technologies at a rapid pace. Our understanding of how to wield those technologies have not kept pace. And so there's many things, and all of us are familiar with many consequences of that. So that side also, knowledge needs to progress with wisdom. We live in very interesting times. We can see the AI revolution happening around us, robotics happening, quantum computing, whether you buy the claims or not, imminent. I fully believe that within the next few years, I believe that it is highly likely that we're going to announce the discovery of the first extraterrestrial life forms in the ice plumes of Enceladus. It's an exciting time to be alive in, right? So my exhortation to Stanford, modern day Library of Alexandria, would be that we have a huge responsibility to actually shine the light on the path forward and to be torchbearers of both knowledge and wisdom for the future. Thank you.